Welcome to the coordinate-based color mapping tutorial. I've split this tutorial into 3 parts, so feel free to skip ahead if you already know some of this stuff. In the first part, I'm going to talk about the HSV and RGB functions and how they work. In the second part, I'm going to be talking about mapping those to coordinates. And in the third part, I'm going to give you some examples to give you some ideas of what you can do with coordinate-based color mapping. Okay, so as you can see, I've written out how hue saturation value works. Hue goes from 0 to 360, so I'll show you how that works with this slider. Okay, so the hue changes the color. Saturation goes from 0 to 1, how saturated it is. Okay, and value goes from 0 to 1 as well. You can think of it as the brightness. Okay. Another important thing to note is that hue is automatically set to take the remainder when you divide by 360. So like I said here, if you had hue equal to 364, that's going to be the same as hue equals 4. And that's because it's going to take the remainder, 364 divided by 360, the remainder is 4. And that way you could have a really big number in this value, and it's still going to pick a color. And for saturation and value, unfortunately, they don't do the remainder. If the value is greater than 1, it's just going to revert to 1. If the value is less than 0, it's just going to revert to 0. Okay, so RGB now goes from 0 to 255. And unfortunately, right now, if it's greater than 255, it's going to revert to 255. And if it's less than 0, it's going to default to 0. So we can see how RGB works. First, I'm going to click the gear and change my sphere to be my second color here, which is my RGB color, and you'll get a sense for how red it is, R clearly, how green it is, okay, and how blue it is. All right, that was the basics, and now I'm gonna set it back to my original sphere color, and I'm gonna talk about coordinate-based color mapping. So the only thing you really have to do to get started is to change, I would just change the hue for now. You could just change it to X, Y, or Z, and then it's gonna change based on what coordinate the surface, in this case a sphere, where it is on that. So if I change it to X right now, it doesn't change because right now my sphere only goes from -10 to 10, and 0 to 10 on the hue value doesn't really change very much. So what I'm going to do is multiply that by 36. If I multiply by 36, then the maximum value it will have is 360. So that should get a nice effect. And we did get a nice effect. All right. If I change the Y value instead, you can see it will change based off of the Y direction, and if I change it to Z, it will change off of the Z direction. And all you have to do to experiment with this is change this to maybe XY, and you get a weird thing going on. Maybe XYZ, you get an even weirder thing. And you can try sine of X, you can try different things to see. I'm going to show you more in the examples. Okay. Now for RGB, to change that, I suggest using the modulus function. The modulus function will give you the remainder when you divide by whatever the second argument of the modulus function is. So for example, if I want it to vary by x's, the R value, I'm going to change this to mod, open the parentheses, do my x values, and have it reset after every time it hits 255. Okay? See, that doesn't look amazing. For the same reason we had before, I should probably multiply x by maybe 25. Okay, it still doesn't look amazing. Oh, well, it looks okay. It's just that it's just changing from bright red to dark red. So that's not that interesting. So what if I also did, for the greens, I did mod 25y, comma 255, and I see how that looks. All right, now I'm starting to get some interesting things. If I change what number I modulate at, we could do 300 and get something different. We can do 1,000. Ooh, I liked 100. That was kind of nice there. starting to look interesting. So you can see how experimenting will get you some interesting things. Okay, now is the part of the video where I'm going to show you some examples of stuff I've done in the past and how it works, just to give you even more ideas of what you can do. So I'm going to turn off my original sphere. I'm going to go into my examples folder, and this link you can find in the description of this video. And you can see I've done something really weird. All I did for this is experiment. And you can see how my plane here has a really cool effect. I think it's cool. All I did was change a bunch of stuff. I decided to raise it to the exponents, add 1,000 because I figured moving it over 1,000 would be nice. And I just messed with the hue because the hue has that nice modulo thing baked in already, so I don't have to worry about doing mod and then other stuff. So if you're just getting started and you don't understand modulo, or modular arithmetic, I would just mess with the hue, stick with HSV. And then if I make this a sphere, you can see how it maps onto a sphere really nicely, which is kind of cool. Okay, for my second example, I did the RGB. You can see already I used mod 255. And again, I just experimented with different things to try to get a cool effect. I think this is pretty cool. We got some ovals or ellipses going. I think it looks pretty nice. Same idea over here, except I use absolute value. And in this case, I need a bigger one. I'll have to zoom out. And I really like this. Again, it was just through experimentation that I found this thing. Looks pretty cool in my opinion. And then in the third one, I wanted to show what happens when you modify the value in the HSV. So I made H go up by the Z component, and I made the value do the modulus with dividing by 1 and taking the remainder. So this is what happens when you do that. Let me zoom in. Okay, you can see the value or the lightness is changing too. So on the Z component, it's moving colors because this is just 8 times whatever Z is. And here it's resetting after every 1. And so that changes because we're going up with a quadratic x squared. Okay, I hope that was helpful for you. Please let me know if you have any questions about this in the comments. Feel free to comment an interesting thing you've done with coordinate-based color mapping. And please let me know if there's any tutorials you'd like in the future. If things get asked for over and over or they get upvoted a lot in the comments, I will be more likely to do those next. And I will probably focus on like intermediate to advanced techniques because Desmos itself has some really great tutorials on the basics of Desmos, so I don't want to recreate what they're doing since it's already really good. All right, have a great day. I hope you enjoyed.